Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Do I Have Time For This? The series that looks at old and new video games, both indie and AAA, to help figure out whether or not you have the time to actually play it, finish it, 100% complete it, or just leave it in your backlog to forever gather dust. We're all busy in life, jobs, kids, classes, exercising, you name it. So let's take a little time right now to look at Midnight Fight Express and figure out, do I have time for this? Side note here, just to keep YouTube happy, I've turned off all the blood effects from the game. Midnight Fight Express can get very gory, and for the true experience, I'd recommend having it turned on. YouTube doesn't like people getting cut in half. Imagine that. Today we're looking at Midnight Fight Express, a top-down brawler developed by one person, Jacob Dwinnell, and published by Humble Games. I'm going to come out and say it, this is the John Wick game all the fans want in all but name. Midnight Fight Express takes some basic mechanics and makes them feel so smooth and fluid that by the end of the game you'll feel unstoppable. This is what I find so weird about this game. It showed up on a ton of upcoming game lists and a few of the smaller streamers streamed it, but it never seemed to catch on in the mainstream arena, despite how solid the gameplay actually is. Whilst this arcade brawler spends very little time on story, I mean you can literally fast forward through the cutscenes, there is a small narrative to keep everything together here. You are Babyface, an ex-criminal brought back out of retirement by a mysterious drone, aka Droney, and yes, you heard me right, to stop a criminal takeover before dawn. Each level starts with an interrogation scene with you being questioned by the police over the events leading up to your arrest, with each of the 40 missions essentially acting as you retelling it. Every mission has an arcade feel, with a list of enemies you'll fight alongside a ranking, score, and 3 challenges you can complete for unlockable extras and cosmetics. I think it's rare that you get a game where the power fantasy is fulfilled as early as it does in Midnight Fight Express. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely a positive, as you feel like an unstoppable badass within the first few missions once you get the hang of the combat system. This is, of course, if you aren't doing the additional challenges set in each level, encouraging you to mix up your playstyle. The core gameplay here is definitely arcade brawler style, somewhat given Hotline Miami vibes in terms of the pace it expects from you, but it isn't a one-hit death situation, so don't worry, you have a health bar which can take a few hits. Punches and kicks really feel like they connect, and randomly reward you for solid hits with gold tooth collectibles, which fly from a criminal's mouth for you to pick up. Collecting 10 teeth rewards you with a cosmetic item you can unlock on the hub menu, and is just the start of the different things you can unlock here. You can find 100 unique weapons, ranging from everyday items like a wrench, plunger, or a piece of office furniture to swords, knives, and guns.
So what do you need besides a miracle?
Guns. Lots of guns.
Each of the weapons come with their own unique finisher moves you'll need to unlock it for each weapon type, but once you have, the cinematic nature of the finishers really makes you feel like a force to be reckoned with. Once you've used a weapon in a level, they'll be available for you to train with in the playground, a training room style sandbox for you to test out your different skills. Upon release, the guns were slightly overpowered, all having a large amount of ammo in them, meaning you could clear entire sections with a handgun or rifle, but playing it recently, they seem to have addressed this and massively reduced the amount of ammo in the gun. Honestly, this just encourages a bit more experimentation from the combat using the tools available to you, with guns being a short reprieve or boost for tougher enemy encounters. Besides, it's much more satisfying to throw a brick at an enemy, kick a chair at another, disarm the big guy with a sledgehammer, and take out everyone in a few hits. It's these kind of dynamic setups that really make this game shine, and anything particularly cool that you do automatically gets suggested as a GIF for you to save to your PC once you reach the mission complete screen. There are a grand total of 117 different enemy classes on this game, not including bosses. And whilst some of them are simply reskins of ones you've already fought, Midnight Fight Express works hard at throwing not only new enemies, like an armoured brute, shield wielder, or ninja, but also provides them in different combinations to make sure you're using the most of your arsenal at any given time. Worth noting as well, after you defeat each enemy, they become available as a character skin to play as once you finish the level. The way the levels are broken down into individual bite-sized chunks makes this an easily recommendable pick up and put down game. A level when you know what you're doing can take 5 minutes when not doing a challenge. Trying to get an S rank isn't that difficult and requires you to do a level quickly and flawlessly. Essentially, the levels or groups of levels each have a theme, such as sewers, offices, a club, and so on, and the enemies and weapon variety change along with them. The game never really stays too long in one theme to feel like you're doing the same thing over and over, as there's always a fresh boss face with a new set of goons to beat up. What I will say is the bosses are more or less just reskinned versions of enemies you've already fought, which is a shame really, as I'd say for the most part, there's only really one boss worth noting here. There are also a handful of what I'd call set piece levels, the first of which sees you on a train dodging a sniper trying to shoot you while taking care of goons. But there are also vehicle type sections where you're driving a motorbike or on a turret and you have to dodge traffic whilst taking care of business. Whilst you can play this game a lot like an Arkham game, spamming the punch button until you see a counter prompt appear, there is an extensive skill tree to add extra options to combat. You start out with 4 different options to change your playstyle, but the most effective ones are the parry and finisher trees, giving you options to quickly iframe out of a tricky situation and get the upper hand. I barely found myself using the grapple moves at all, to be honest. 2 further options are added to the skill tree as you progress through the game, granting you rope, which is essentially the grapple from afar, and the secondary gun. Now I don't know if the secondary gun is directly inspired by the gadget gun from XXX, but in my headcanon, Vin Diesel was clearly the intended user here.
The definition of perfection. My multi-purpose, multifunction field revolver.
The secondary gun starts off as just a standard revolver with 1 magnum bullet, one-shotting the majority of low-level enemies, but as you level through the skill tree you unlock ridiculous options like electro bolts, hypnotizing rounds, and a shockwave. This tool becomes essential as the game gets harder and definitely adds a lot of variety to your playstyle. Given the game can be finished fairly quickly, the main reason to replay this game is the unlockables, as you have 5 to get for each level, 4 outfit items and 1 perk. The outfits can range from stylish to outright silly.
Do you or do you not feel bonita?
I feel bonita.
Wonderful, because you look bonita.
But the best skins are unlocked by completing all the challenges in a given level. These challenge skins are homages to different comic book, TV and game characters like Daredevil or even the cat from the Lone Digger music video. The perks you can get pretty much all negatively impact your end of mission score, as the majority of them act as buffs to your attacks or weapons, such as infinite ammo or one-punch knockouts, but they add an old school cheat feel to the game, back when we used to play a game endlessly with God mode on, purely because it felt like fun. The art style for this game is fairly minimalistic and blocky, which for me evokes the older days of running around in Die Hard 1 for the PS1, clearing each level of Nakatomi Plaza with Bruce Willis quipping the whole time. As I said at the start of the video, this game isn't afraid to get really gory in an over-stylized kind of way, and really helps you get into that action movie headspace. By far the biggest shout out here has to go to the soundtrack. The synth rhythm here is insane, and perfectly balances the punchy, fast-paced combat. There isn't a dull moment or a second the music lets up and drops you out of the immersion of being this badass ex-criminal taking down an empire. It really gets your blood pumping, so much so I've started using it as a running playlist and a workout playlist as well. It definitely harkens back to that Matrix underground party scene or that opening scene in Wesley Snipes' Blade movie, and intentionally so I'd say, as it's one of its many references. You may have noticed I've mentioned tons of pop culture references in this video, and you'd be right to do so. Midnight Fight Express makes references constantly throughout its playtime, and has Easter eggs for TV shows, films, and games. It can be something as small as the so-called special character interactions being marked with a Heisenberg head, or something as big as taking on Kyla Turden in a parking lot boss fight. The developer loves to make homages to their inspirations, and it's fun to see who or what comes up next as an unlockable character or a set piece. They don't often make games with this many references anymore. We even get the fully fledged Modern Warfare 2 level No Russian in here, albeit with a few tweaks that made it legally distinct.
Looks like some sort of legally safe knockoff of an 80s horror character with miniature swords for fingers instead of knives.
So, let's get down to it. How long does this game take? If you're looking to just do the main story, no challenges, and having a few setbacks, you'll be looking at around 6 hours. If you decide you're going to unlock everything, not including all the achievements, you can easily push this to 10 hours. Full completion including achievements being around 25 hours depending on whether you follow guides, and if you want to replay with all the perks on for just a bit of fun. I played Midnight Fight Express on standard difficulty and played on release day, which is worth mentioning as some of the pre-patch challenges and boss sections were very difficult on release. They've since rebalanced a lot of the game's challenges to make it much easier to complete. I've currently sank 38 hours into the game, and I feel like I've definitely gotten my money's worth from it. I've by no means completed it, but I've spent a lot of time on those old challenges pre-patch, which just was a nightmare to do. I haven't tried out the two harder difficulty settings, hard and realistic, but given the achievements are purely to finish the game on those settings rather than get S ranks in them, I can't imagine them to be too bad in terms of time investment. It's more the achievements asking you to perform 250 melee finishes or throw 250 environmental objects that are going to take most of your time on this game. As I said earlier, the game is so easy to pick up and play for short bursts that anyone can jump into this on standard difficulty and have a blast, especially action film lovers looking for that unstoppable feeling. Checkpointing is also very generous and restarts almost instantaneously if you die, so don't worry about long load times. Ultimately, with some of the smoothest arcade beat 'em up gameplay I've come across on the indie scene, I definitely recommend Midnight Fight Express. Whilst the enemy variety can be quite minimal the longer you play, and the bosses are a bit lackluster in terms of mechanics, there is a decent chunk of game here for the price, especially for completionists. This game on a casual difficulty with some aspects of completion really respects your time as a consumer, and can be a great 30-minute to an hour gaming session when you don't have a lot of spare time and you have a busy schedule. This is also a very non-gamers type of game, where you can pick it up and have a blast without having to get too invested in mechanics or the world, and the combat options really allow you to get as invested as you like. I will say the harder difficulty and going for 100% completion will take a bit more time than some busy gamers are willing to invest, but there are no sections which demand long stints of play. I feel like the post-release patch addressing a lot of the challenge difficulty spikes has really made Midnight Fight Express one of those games where you can easily be a busy person and find the time to complete it, if you're that kind of gamer. So, do you think you have time for Midnight Fight Express? On this channel I like to give my thoughts on the game, alongside a bit more of a deep dive on the time you have to invest, so you know what you're getting into before you load it up, because time is precious, right? If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, feel free to like and share. If you subscribe, I'm looking to put out regular content like this alongside some more in-depth video essays, so stick around, and if you have any requests on future videos, just drop them in the comments. And finally, if you want to come hang out and chat with me, you can find me over on twitch.tv/GraciousRhino every Sunday. I'm Gracious Rhino, look after each other, and I'll catch you soon.